Thank you, Helga. And it is both a privilege and a delight for me to introduce today's student speaker, Kristin Fossett. I can really still recall the first afternoon that Kristin appeared at my office door, and she was there to discuss transferring from biological sciences into the Women's and Gender Studies major. She struck me then, as she has ever since, as extraordinarily determined, knowledgeable, and optimistic about pursuing this rather substantial shift in her academic focus. She knew it would take some meticulous planning, and it did, and it worked because she worked very, very hard. Spanish 201, a course which some of you may have fond or not so fond memories of, was not going to get the best of her, and it didn't. As a matter of fact, based on my experience with Kristin, I'm going to guess that she has likely never encountered an obstacle that she didn't consider an enticement. That is, as an opportunity for her to creatively figure out how, in fact, she was going to come out on top. I'm also going to propose that Kristin is the veritable queen of time management. For how else do we account not only for her academic achievement, but for the following? That since 2012, she has served as vice president and this past year as president of the Pre-Physicians Assistants and Nursing Club. That since 2011, she has been a member of the Wolfpack Rowing Club, as a varsity rower since 2012, as safety officer every year, and this past year as president. Since the fall of her sophomore year, she's been a member of the Sigma Alpha Pi Honor Society for Leadership and Academic Success. And this spring, she also completed a semester-long internship with the NCSU Women's Center, where, among other responsibilities, she helped to coordinate the annual Sisterhood Dinner, the Trio Days of Service event, and Take Back the Night, while also creating a lesson plan for middle school students on gender and diversity issues. And since 2011, Kristin has worked or volunteered nearly 2,000 hours under her emergency medical technician and certified nursing assistant licensures. I could go on. There is more, but I think you get the picture. As a WGS major and as a soon-to-be NC State graduate, Kristin's achievements offer a wonderful example of what feminists and others call praxis. That is, our capacity to take in ideas and theories from the academic realm, to analyze them, to wrestle with them, and then to put them into practice, testing them in the public and civic arenas. In her most well-known work, The Human Condition, philosopher Hannah Arendt calls praxis the highest and most important level of the active life, as well as a necessity for this thing we call participatory democracy. So for all of the above reasons, and simply because she is a most delightful person, it is with a great deal of pride and pleasure that I introduce today's student speaker, Kristin Fossett.
Hey guys. Well, thank you, Dr. Hooker. That was very kind. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, family, friends, fellow graduates, and faculty. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. As you know, my name is Kristin Fossett. I'm a Women's and Gender Studies major with minors in biological science, health, and sports science. Much like my parents, you may be wondering how I came to such a combination. It's pretty simple, but we'll have to go back a few years to make sure you get the whole story. I can remember our freshman orientation sessions bringing us through this very building. Our parents were being bombarded with information regarding university fees, tuition payments, and meal plan expenses. Little did they know, their NC State freshmen could not even locate the dining hall at the time. I was a declared biological science major with a concentration in human biology and big plans for medical school. Like my fellow classmates, when summer ended, we packed our bags and set off for Raleigh in the most exciting 4 or 5 years of our lives. During my first semester at NC State, I struggled with the rigor of my biological science courses. On one hand, I was grateful for testing out of freshman level biology, but on the other, I was discouraged after being placed in a strictly online sophomore level anatomy course. But things began well enough. In general chemistry during the fall of 2010, for example, there were an abundance of study groups, and as a class, we did our homework together, working through problems and solutions to our professor's satisfaction. Then, in the spring of 2011, in Organic Chemistry 1, the sense of community and strength of numbers began to dissipate. Study groups and homework help sessions became a thing of the past, and instead of competing against my peers, I was looking for an opportunity to engage and initiate with them. Classes had become a competition for the top seat and extra research hours with professors, when all I needed was someone to rekindle the spark of ambition and interest I held before college. Over the next 2 years, as I was working my way through anatomy courses and chemistry lectures and physics labs, I came to the harsh reality that my degree was missing something. Or maybe it was me that was missing something. Somewhere between organic and genetics, I lost my human element. Maybe that sounds backwards. How could someone lose the human element in a degree dedicated to the mastery of the physiological and structural functionings of the human body? Feeling helpless, I was ready to give up and start something new. And then I was introduced to the WGS major, a degree program that has taught me that I can have the classroom experience that I was truly looking for. I can satisfy my need for career-stimulating courses such as medical terminology and emergency medical technician training, while engaging in theoretical discussions and research on things like stages of emotional and cognitive growth in applied child development. With 2 years of a human biology degree behind me, I had acquired more than enough credits for the biological science minor and was well on my way to completing minors in health and sports science as well. I made the decision in the spring of 2012 to transfer into the College of Humanities and Social Science and into the Women's and Gender Studies degree program. Again, much like my parents, you may be wondering, well, what is Women's and Gender Studies? Or better yet, what kind of job can you get with a Women's and Gender Studies degree? That's always a favorite at the family gatherings. Well, according to the official university website, a Women's and Gender Studies degree is one that teaches students to critically examine and reinterpret data and common assumptions about gender and gender identity. The degree enables students to both examine men and women's lives as they are affected by gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, age, race, class, ethnicity, religion, and national differences. To me, things are a bit simpler than that. A degree in Women's and Gender Studies is one that teaches students to question the answers, refuse to accept the status quo, and explore paths of research that directly address the questions of equity, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, age, race, or class. In the words of Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, a West Coast hip-hop duo that was nominated for 7 Grammys last year alone, it's the same hate that's caused wars from religion, gender to skin color, the complexion of your pigment. The same fight that led people to walkouts and sit-ins, it's human rights for everybody, there is no difference. Our generation and those which came before us have opened the floodgates for social equality, and now it's our turn to ensure that no one goes without a fair chance of success, politically, socially, or economically. Through the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies at NC State, your children, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, and grandchildren are learning to lead their peers in what is being called the fight of our generation, one over human equality. You're probably all familiar with the gender wage gap, that women are paid 77 cents to the dollar that a man makes with the same education level, job training, and on-the-job experience, yet her work is historically and continually undervalued. Among developed countries, the United States has some of the lowest proportions of women and minorities in political and authoritative roles throughout all sectors of our society. Persistent limitations on women and minorities without ties to privileged white males often regulate these groups to live closest to and below poverty lines. Across the United States, for example, 11% of women over the age of 65 live in poverty, compared to 6.6% of men their age. Need something a little closer to home? Those numbers jump to 15.4% of women and 11.9% of men between the ages of 18 and 64. So where will this degree lead me? Yes, Mom and Dad, it better be to a paycheck, I got it. But an undergraduate degree is about more than the money. Next week, I will begin my post-grad career at Henry Children's Hospital in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, as a certified nursing assistant. Also next week, I will begin my first post-grad volunteer position at CareRing, a nonprofit group also in Charlotte, downtown North Carolina. This organization provides access to medical and dental care to the uninsured and underinsured across North Carolina while empowering these individuals to take responsibility for their own health through education and a low-cost clinic. While these are only stepping stones for me, there are still bigger things on my horizon. After gaining post-grad life experience in the working world, I will matriculate into a degree program for physician assistant studies. Whether graduate school leads me to Boston, Florida, or beyond, I've captured the passion of my Women's and Gender Studies degree that will lead me to serve the underrepresented groups of rural North Carolina. Through my education and training, I'm preparing myself to advocate for some of North Carolina's neediest populations, those with limited access to affordable and reliable health care. When I was preparing this speech several months ago, I came across a quote I found to be quite powerful. Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, "In our society, the women who break down barriers are those who ignore limits." But I'd like to change that for our purposes here today. For the class of 2014, we must hold true that in our society, the people who break down barriers are those who ignore limits. Our potential is limitless. Each and every one of us is destined to succeed, and failure is not an option. In the words of Jimmy Valvano, don't give up, don't ever give up. Congratulations to my fellow graduates, to the North Carolina State University class of 2014. Good luck and go Pack.